Hey there, it's Melanie from Chasing Fi, and today I have an update on the house that we were slated to purchase. It is a very interesting update, so you're going to want to watch this one to the end because we learned some serious, valuable lessons that are going to help us keep from getting scammed in a real estate market that is just crazy and continues to be crazy even with interest rates rising. So you're going to want to stick around for that. Please do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe because this journey, this real estate journey, this financial journey, it is starting to become extremely interesting. And you're not going to want to miss out on this because you can learn from my crazy mistakes. So, back to the house in Cincinnati. To refresh our memories here, we're talking about a duplex that had a 2-bedroom unit, 1 bath, and then a 1-bedroom, 1 bath unit. It was located in Cincinnati in West Price Hill, that neighborhood, right by Elder High School. And we were going to purchase it for $167,900. It also has renters in place, so between all of the renters, we were going to bring in about 1700 a month. Plus they had coin laundry in the basement. So they claimed that they were making about an extra 3,000 a year from that. So obviously we were excited. We were happy. We were looking forward to it. But then the real estate inspection happened. And this, my friends, changed everything. Now, one of the things that I'm so glad I did before we started even looking for properties is I read a little bit about real estate laws in the states that we were looking for properties. Michigan and Ohio are two states that I am relatively familiar with, and Indiana as well. Not as much, but Michigan and Ohio I know fairly well. And I decided to just review some of the real estate laws, and I'm so glad I did that because obviously laws vary state to state, but there are certain things that are in real estate contracts in certain areas that you need to be aware of before you sign them. So I read over the laws, and generally it looked like things were fair. I'm not looking for laws that really swing things in the favor of the seller or the buyer. I just want fair laws. And I can say, from what I've experienced, Ohio has some pretty, very fair. They've made their laws fair for the buyer and the seller and the real estate agents because obviously this is their business and you don't want people coming in. For example, this happens in Utah. Sometimes people, sight unseen, will put an offer on a house so they can tie up that house. They might be in Washington or California or whatever, and then they'll tie up that house. The real estate agent thinks, okay, I've got to sell. And then they come to town, and when they get here, they don't want that house anymore. So then they back out of the deal. That means that house is off the market, and that real estate agent who thinks they have a sale doesn't. And then they have to start all over. In addition to that, as a buyer, you look and you see that the house was pending a sale, and you're wondering why it fell out of escrow. This makes you want to go to the next house. At least it does for me, because I know if someone has had their house out there and it has been pending a sale 1, 2, 3 times, and I've seen this, there's probably something wrong with the house. Even once, I'm wondering, why did that happen? So I understand the law that Ohio has in place where you can get out of a real estate contract if something major is wrong. But if you're just like, you know what, I don't like something cosmetic about the house, you're not able to just back out of it. And I think from what I read, it seemed like that was the case at some point there. So now the law is if something shows up in the inspection that was not disclosed before the inspection, before you sign the contract, and it's a serious matter like the structural integrity of the building or something like that, then you can get out of it. Or asbestos, lead paint, things like that. If they are not disclosed in the property disclosure, then, and it turns up in the inspection, you can get out of that contract. So to me, that's very fair. I felt safe signing the contract because I read it and I was like, okay, like, of course we want to move forward with the sale unless something major shows up like that. Unfortunately, the inspection turned up all kinds of things in the house that really were not good, but we were okay. We understand the house is almost 100 years old. There are going to be things wrong with it. We live in a house that's pretty old, about 70 years old or so, and we know there will be problems, and we're okay with that. But something that could affect the structural integrity of the house is not okay with us. During the inspection, the inspector saw that there had been termite infestations at some point in the house. Now, we don't know when because that wasn't disclosed to us. He's in the basement. He's looking at the floor joists in the basement, the back of the house, and he's showing, he takes a picture of it, and you can see that there were termites there at some time. Now, with termites, what you don't see is very important. Now, if you're seeing that they had made their little mud tunnels on that joist, my question is, where else have they been in the house? Did this happen 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or last year? And are they just waiting for springtime to come back out? These were all questions that we had. And obviously, like I said, we wanted this house. It's a good looking house, nice sturdy brick, all that stuff. But we did notice that the front porch there was a balcony. It's like kind of like what we used to call 2-family flats in Michigan, where it's kind of like a duplex up and down. And the railing on the second floor had been taken out and the door had been padlocked because you didn't want anybody out there because there's no railing. But then we noticed there was a little bit of a lean to it, and we knew we were going to have to fix that. So that wasn't a big deal. We just thought rotted wood. But was it rotted wood or was it termite damage? Because that makes a difference. In addition to that, we don't know what's going on in the attic because the inspector said there is no way to access it. So he said in his report that he was not able to determine the structural integrity of the building, and he's not a structural engineer anyway, but he said you need to have that checked out. You need the attic looked at before you close because that has important information about the structural integrity of the house. Now, we decided initially to go the route where you inform the seller that there are defects with the house and you give them an opportunity to respond as to whether or not they will fix them. We wrote up what we'd like and we sent it to the real estate agent. The real estate agent, who hadn't reached out to us with any type of form or anything, said, oh, you guys wrote it down. Yes, because we want everything in writing from here forth because we have a contract here. And we know that if we're writing something down, we need to make sure that it gets to the person that we're trying to get it to. And if you just say that you verbally told them, that doesn't work for us. So I think that we kind of surprised the real estate agent with that. Personally, what I think is, he was trying to run down the clock, like you might do in football, where you're just trying to run down that clock, run it down so that you win the game. And that's what would have been happening if he had just decided verbally to say, hey, they want this stuff fixed. No, we want it in writing. So we made sure to email it to him. And after we emailed it, he was like, oh, okay, yeah, you guys wrote it down. Then he comes back with a form that he's filled out, and he said, hey, I put everything that you guys wanted on this form. Let me know if I left anything out. Well, when I go to read the form with all the defects, which, there were things like the electrical service was, somebody decided to split it up. It was an overload, basically. An electrician had not been there. The furnaces had asbestos tape on it, which was another thing that was not disclosed, like on the ducting and everything. When you got up in there, there was asbestos tape. All that was supposed to be on the property disclosure. It wasn't. So we have a list of things that we want done. We write that we want a licensed, insured, and bonded person to do it. Electrician, plumber, things like that. And the real estate agent changed all that wording to professional. Now, professional, I mean, what does that even mean? When we say we want a licensed, bonded, and insured person doing the work, there's a reason that we're using those terms. And the fact that he took it out irked me. So I just responded with, actually, we need to make sure that those people are licensed, insured, and bonded. And we also want to see inside of the attic, and we want the structural integrity of the house evaluated. These things sound reasonable to me because we're getting ready to make this big purchase and we want to make sure that we are making a good decision. Well, the real estate agent came back with kind of a nasty note saying, I don't know what you're talking about. The inspector said that the termites were gone and he didn't see any live ones, so nothing else needs to be done. And then I thought about it. I'm like, why am I even wasting my brain power on this? There are so many houses out there for sale. I don't need to try to make this one work, especially when the real estate agent is changing the wording of what we want and all this stuff. Forget about the defect notice. I went right back to the contract and I pulled out the section that says, that explains that if the seller did not disclose something and it's found in the inspection and it's something major, like especially to do with the structural integrity of the house, done. You don't even need the seller's signature. There's a unilateral form. You say, not happy with the real estate inspection, and you're done. Well, you're not quite done. Actually, you need to include the parts of the inspection that you're not happy with. So I took snapshots of the sections of the inspection that we were not happy with, and also the recommendations from the inspector, which basically he's saying, I can't even get in the attic. You have to have that looked at. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it needs to be looked at. So we fired that off. And of course, I mean, like that's the law. So, but when we fired it off, what I did was I included in the email that I was going to forward this to the listing agent as well, because the law says you got to let the seller know. Now, the real estate agent is in charge. Well, he said that he was in charge of sending the form. And that may be true. But at this point, I didn't trust the real estate agent because he had changed my words when I said I wanted a licensed, insured, and bonded contractor doing the work. So what I did was I just said, I'm going to forward this to the listing agent as well. I didn't do that. But what I did do is when we finally got the official form that got us out of the contract, every other form, once we had signed it, the real estate agent had sent us a copy. We didn't send it this time. So what I did was I made sure to take pictures of that to show that we did sign, and we did sign on Saturday, well within our inspection period. Because the real estate agent had a little snafu, or at least he said it was a little snafu, when we first signed the contract, that where we signed and then our signatures disappeared. This was initially just seemed like a minor tech issue, but looking back on it, I think something else was going on. I also noticed that after we signed the contract on January 8th. Well, on January 8th, or sometime thereafter, the description of the property was changed to include sold as is. Now, I don't look at properties that say sold as is because, once again, I think there's something there. If you're selling a property and you're throwing that in there as is, it's probably some big repair that you don't want to do. So I don't even look at properties that have that on it. And that's how I know they went back in and added that in. So at this point, we've terminated the contract. Everything's done. But for some reason, the house is still saying that it's pending sale. This was bugging me because I'm like, what? Now, the seller, once they know all the problems with the house, they have to disclose those things in their property disclosure list. They can't. Now, most of the things that they said in there were not true. I mean, The electrical service is wrong. The furnaces haven't been serviced. There's no evidence that they've been serviced in the past year. They're pretty old furnaces too, so probably been several years. The water heaters have a backdraft on them, like dangerous. The carbon monoxide can come out of the water heaters from that. So there are all these defects, the asbestos tape, all that stuff. So they have to go back and change their property disclosure before they put the house back on the market, or at least they're supposed to. And we did. We said that it's fine for the real estate agent to share that entire inspection report because, I mean, there are people living in that house. And my husband, because he is such a nice guy, was like, we should buy that just so that they have a better place to live. We would fix everything that's wrong. And while that's admirable, and I would love to do that, and if the house was, I don't know, $70,000, maybe even $60,000, fine, we can do that. But these people were asking for quite a bit more than that. And I just told them, I said, let's let this one go after the real estate agent was, changing our wording and everything. So all of that happened over this past weekend. So by Sunday afternoon, we had signed, we found a form online and we had signed that saying, real estate inspection, we're not pleased with it, we don't want the house. So we sent that just to cover ourselves on Saturday, but the real estate agent sent us the form from his agency on Sunday. We signed it Sunday morning, things were good. So then on Tuesday morning, we get up and we have text messages from the real estate agent in Cincinnati. And he's asking if we have any time for a phone call. So I'm like, yeah, maybe he's going to tell us about our earnest money because we put down $1,000 earnest money, which I figured they'd just sit back in a check. But if we can get it faster, sure, let's hear about it. So I thought that that's why he was calling us. Or even calling us to say, hey, maybe that wasn't the best deal, things like that. No, that's not what he was calling us for. Instead, when we talk to him, the first thing out of his mouth is, I'm sorry I wasn't in touch yesterday. I had a funeral to go to. And so, of course, we say, we're sorry to hear that. Then he says, oh man, the seller, I talked to him. He's so bummed. He's so bummed. He really wants this deal to go through. So here's what I can do. I know some contractors that I trust that I could have do all the work. And I mean, you guys could still get this house and it would be great because you're going to get that cash flow immediately. And I'm just sitting there like, I cannot believe this guy. This guy is the worst used car salesman I've ever come across. But he was still trying to talk up this house after the inspection. And he knew it was terrible. Like the fact that they didn't disclose the termite damage. Okay. The asbestos tape. Oh, okay. But here's what it means. It means that they have not been taking care of this house. So there are probably multiple other issues that would come up after we purchased the property and had proper maintenance done on it. So that's a problem in and of itself. But in addition to that, that they lied on their property disclosure. They blatantly lied on it. And he's like, oh, well, they just didn't know. Well, even if they didn't know, it's their responsibility, even if they don't live in the house, to answer it to the best of their ability. Now, if they purchase the house without an inspection, I mean, that wasn't smart because now anyone that goes to buy it is probably going to have an inspection. And that means they're going to turn up all these things. So I don't know, but I was shocked that the real estate agent was still trying to sell us this house, which I would think as a real estate agent, you would call up your clients and you would say, you know what? I'm sorry that one didn't work out, but I've got this house and I've got that house. And, why not offer us other houses? We're eager to buy. We just want a good deal. But he didn't do that. Now, why didn't he do that? I have a theory. I could be wrong, but I think this is pretty close. The listing agent is the star quarterback in the real estate world in Cincinnati. He's been on the news the local news there, talking about the real estate market. He's all over. He's got a really sweet website. He's got so basically we were dealing with a very green real estate agent. He's been a real estate agent for about two-ish years, maybe close to three. He's a former cop, so this is a second career for him. And I think that he really looks up to the listing agent. In fact, every time we would go to him about something, he'd ask the listing agent. This was a mistake on our part. We saw a house on realtor.com and we said, hey, we want more information. And realtor.com then connects you with an agent. And obviously we didn't have an agent in Cincinnati, so it's not like we chose to work with this particular agent over another one. We didn't have one. Our new strategy going forward is when it comes to real estate agents, we have one in Indiana that's good, and we have one in Michigan that's good, because the one in Michigan is my brother-in-law, so I know him. And then the one in Indiana, he's been really, really good at giving us a feel for the market in Fort Wayne and all that stuff. So we're sticking with him. But from now on, we are going to maybe have some interaction with the real estate agents. Like, I'm talking a couple weeks, maybe, just to get a feel for who we're dealing with, because this guy, we liked him and we wanted to trust him. Like I said, he was a former cop, so that kind of, we're like, oh, that's so cool and things like that. But he really just was battling to get us to buy this house, even after he knew it wasn't a good deal for us. He didn't even make suggestions like, well, why don't you maybe make a counter offer to the offer that you have made, for a lot less or anything like that. He didn't advise in that way or anything like that. He just was like, oh, I know some contractors, they can do this. No, we don't want that. Like, by the end of the whole situation, it felt like this guy was so shady and not very good at being shady. But I think part of that is because he just looks up so much to this other real estate agent that he didn't want to upset him. He wanted to kind of, he wanted to fit in. He wanted to be friends with the quarterback. And once we got that feel, we were like, okay, we need to really look into these real estate agents a little bit better. I mean, we did look into the one in Indiana, and from what we saw, he seems like a really good, honest real estate agent. And that's why we have stuck with him. We haven't looked at anything in Fort Wayne recently, but when we do again, he'll be the person that we use because we have a certain amount of trust for him. And my brother-in-law in Michigan, like, he's taken a while to like show us certain houses, and that's because he's doing his due diligence to find out if it's even a decent deal for us. He knows that we're looking for a house that we want to rent. So when he sees certain houses, he's like, I don't know if that's going to be a good deal for you. So we just, obviously, real estate agents want to make a sale, and we respect that and we understand it, but it's better to make a good sale because this isn't going to be the only time we plan on buying a house. We plan on buying as many rentals as we can. And if you do a good job, we'll be back. It's as simple as that. But this has taught us so much. After we were done with the contract, we had terminated it and everything, I really started to dig into this house that we were going to buy. I wanted to use it as a test case to see, okay, what do I need to do so that I don't run into these problems in the future? So I went to the county auditor's site, and I didn't know that you could find all this information on there, so shame on me. But I was able to pull up the title for the duplex in Cincinnati, and it looks like the owners, they transferred it to an LLC on December 8th. They put it on the market on December 8th. So then I started to dig a little bit deeper, and there's nothing wrong with putting a rental property in an LLC. In fact, it's a good way to go. But why would you put it in the LLC on the day you list it to be sold? That seemed odd to me. So then I started to dig a little bit deeper. And at some point, the house was listed on HomePath, which is the site where you can do a deed in lieu of foreclosure and Or you can sell your house to Fannie Mae and then they will sell it instead of you going into foreclosure. But HomePath has a higher standard. Like, they don't want a house that's falling apart or has major issues because they want to be able to sell it to someone who can just pick it up. They might have to make some, minor repairs or whatever, but the major things they don't want to deal with. They don't want a home project. They just want to be able to sell the house. So, because these were latent defects in the house that the naked eye would not see, I think what happened is they had an appraisal, which I was able to see. They did have one done, it looks like, in August of 2020, and then they put the house on the market in December. I think that they were trying to do the deed in lieu of foreclosure, where you just, you do that and then you sell your house and then you don't go into foreclosure. But because the house had certain problems, I don't think HomePath would go for it. So it was listed on HomePath initially, but then it was never updated on HomePath. It was placed on Realtor.com and Zillow and things like that. And the price was reduced and all of that. What I think happened is that these people, they purchased this house. They bought it for $118,000 in February 2020. And they just realized afterwards, perhaps they didn't have an inspection. Maybe they just waived it. Maybe they paid cash. I don't know. But I think that what happened is that they purchased this house. They had no idea what they were getting, or they did know what they were getting. And they thought, we'll be able to flip the price anyway, which is something that I'm seeing a lot of in the real estate market right now. There's house flipping where you actually do work in the house. But what I'm seeing a lot of is people want to flip the price. They're trying to take advantage of the market where they buy a house and then a year and a half later, they sell it for, 75% more because of market prices. Now, this works in some areas, but in other places, those houses just kind of linger. This is what I think was happening with this duplex in Cincinnati. I think that they picked it up. They obviously didn't do a darn thing to it in terms of improvements. And then they decided, well, the market's high, so we are going to try to sell this house for as much as we can. Unfortunately, we almost got taken for fools on this deal. But the good thing is that we would, and I mean, this is something that we won't ever be doing, is waiving inspections. We were eagerly awaiting the inspection results. And I'm so glad that even though we're hungry and we want rental properties, we were smart enough to say, you know what, we don't know what's going on with the structural integrity of this house. We are out. I'm glad that we did not go through with that deal. And now we're back on the prowl, but with much more information. Now, before we even view a house, before we take the tour, we're doing title searches of our own on the auditor website. We are looking to see the history of the house, find out as much as we can about when it was sold, how many times it's been sold, and things like that. Like, we're really digging into that, going as far back as, we can see online. So like when you go to the auditor's website, this is actually pretty cool for some of these houses. You can see, I think like from the 1950s on, you can see how many times the house has been sold and things like that. So we're doing all this research, and then we're also talking with property management companies in the areas that we're looking to buy houses in, which is something that we should have done in the first place. But we're talking to them about the best places to have rentals and just learning more about the rental markets in these different places that we're looking. So that is the story of the infamous duplex in Cincinnati. Like I said, we're hungry, we're eager, but we're not stupid. So we decided not to go through with it. That's all for now. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.